For 10 years, the gym only knew him as the quiet janitor who cleaned up their sweat and blood. But when a student's safety was on the line, they were about to discover that the man holding the mop was once the most dangerous fighter in the world. The chemical scent of antiseptic, mingling with the primal coppery tang of sweat and old leather, was the incense of the temple. This was the Olympus Gym, a place where modern gods were forged from flesh and ambition, their grunts and the rhythmic thud of fists on heavy bags a form of prayer. And every night after the gods had departed, a ghost would appear to tidy their sanctuary. His name was James, that's all anyone knew. He was the janitor, a man of 42 who seemed to glide through the cavernous space, a silent, almost invisible presence. His movements were economical and precise, the swish of his mop a meditative rhythm, his face a placid mask that concealed a universe of pain. If you believe that the quietest people often have the most powerful stories, do us a favor and subscribe to the channel. And let us know in the comments. What's a time you completely misjudged someone based on their appearance or job? For James, this gym was both a sanctuary and a self-imposed prison. Each sound, each scent, was a phantom limb, a ghost of a life he had violently amputated 2 decades ago. The sharp crack of a punch hitting the pads was the echo of a promise broken. The sight of young fighters, their eyes full of fire and dreams, was a painful reminder of the man he used to be and the friend he had lost. Tonight, the gym's head coach and owner, Derek the King Mitchell, was holding court long after the regular classes had ended. Derek was a man sculpted from ego, a former regional champion whose moderate success had convinced him he was a titan of the sport. His dojo was his fiefdom, and he ruled it with the iron fist of a man terrified of his own limitations. His authority was built on a pyramid of belts, trophies, and the systematic humiliation of anyone he deemed lesser. His current target was a skinny, eager teenager named Leo, a new member on a scholarship, whose heart was leagues bigger than his frame. Derek was using Leo as a living punching bag, a demonstration for a few of his senior students on how to break an opponent's will. "See that, gentlemen?" Derek sneered, effortlessly parrying one of Leo's clumsy, exhausted jabs. "No foundation, no power, all heart, no technique. And in this world, heart gets you a nice trip to the emergency room." He punctuated the lesson with a hard, contemptuous shove that sent Leo stumbling back against the ropes, gasping for air, tears of frustration and pain welling in his eyes. From the other side of the gym, where he was polishing the wall of mirrors, James watched the reflection of the brutal lesson. He saw Leo's shaking shoulders, the utter despair on his young face. And in that moment, he didn't see Leo. He saw his best friend, Tony Rodriguez, 2 decades ago, in that final, fateful sparring session. He saw the same desperation in Tony's eyes after a week of being belittled by a rival gym's coach, the same toxic pressure that had pushed James to go too hard, to prove a point that ended in tragedy. The reflection in the mirror wavered, and for a second, James saw the face of his sister, Kesha, fearless and defiant, always standing up to the bullies in their neighborhood, a fire that had been extinguished far too soon. He had sworn a vow on Tony's grave, a vow of absolute nonviolence. But he had also sworn a promise to Keisha's memory, to never ever stand by and watch the strong prey on the weak. "That's enough, Sensei." A voice, quiet but firm, cut through the gym. Every head turned. The voice had come from the janitor. James stood with a polishing cloth in his hand, his posture unremarkable, yet his voice had carried the weight of an ultimatum. Derek slowly turned, a look of utter disbelief on his face. He let out a short, incredulous laugh. "Excuse me? What did you just say?" "The boy is done," James repeated, his gaze fixed on the trembling form of Leo. "You've made your point. Let him go home." The gym fell into a stunned, electric silence. The air crackled. The audacity of the janitor, the invisible man, challenging the king in his own castle was unthinkable. Derek's face contorted into a mask of pure, venomous rage. It wasn't just the challenge, it was the public nature of it. It was the quiet man stepping out of the shadows and questioning his authority. He strode towards James, his chest puffed out, every inch the alpha predator. "You," Derek spat, poking a hard finger into James's chest. "Mop the floors, you clean the toilets. You do not ever Tell me how to run my class or how to teach my students. Do you understand me? James didn't flinch. He simply looked down at Derek's finger on his chest and then back up at his eyes. A teacher builds, James said, his voice still impossibly calm. A bully breaks, you are not a teacher. That was it. The final straw. Derek exploded in a roar of laughter, but it was a brittle, ugly sound, laced with fury. Oh, this is rich. This is beautiful. The janitor thinks he's a philosopher. He thinks he knows the art. He turned to his students, a wild, manic gleam in his eyes. You know what, gentlemen? I think our friend here needs a lesson himself. A real lesson in what this art is all about. He turned back to James, his smile a predatory slash. You think I was too hard on the kid? You think you know better? Fine. I was looking for a new punching bag anyway. He gestured grandly to the ring. I'm offering you a chance, janitor. A free lesson. Step into the ring with me. Let's spar. James shook his head slowly. I don't fight anymore. Oh, I don't fight anymore. Derek mocked in a high-pitched voice. What's the matter? Scared you'll break a nail? Or maybe you're just what you look like. A washed-up old man who's an expert with a mop and nothing else. An older man training in the corner, a grizzled former pro named Marcus Williams, watched the exchange with a growing sense of dread. He had seen James move around the gym, had noted the impossible balance, the fluid grace. He had seen that kind of quiet, contained stillness before, in the truly dangerous men of his sport. Derek, maybe you should leave the man alone, Marcus called out, his voice a low warning. Derek ignored him. I'll make you a deal, he said to James, his voice dripping with condescension. You get in that ring. If you can survive one round with me, just 3 minutes, without getting knocked out, I'll apologize to the kid. I'll even apologize to you. He paused. But when I knock you out, and I will knock you out, you will get on your hands and knees and scrub this entire mat with a toothbrush. And you'll do it while my students and I watch. What do you say? James's eyes flickered again to Leo, who was watching, terrified, from the ropes. He saw Tony. He saw Kesha. He saw a lifetime of bullies who preyed on the weak because no one ever stood up to them. His vow was a chain around his soul, but Derek's cruelty was a key, threatening to unlock it. I don't fight, James repeated, his voice strained. Then you're a coward. Derek sneered, moving in close, his voice a venomous whisper. And you'll stand there and watch me take this kid apart in the next round. And you'll know it's because you didn't have the guts to do anything about it. He shoved James hard. How does that feel, janitor? To be a helpless coward? That was the word. The final key. Not the insult to himself, but the helplessness he was being forced to feel. The same helplessness he felt when he got the call about his sister. The same helpless guilt he felt standing over his friend's grave. James took a deep, shuddering breath. The ghost within him, the champion he had tried to kill for 20 years, stirred from its long slumber. All right, he said, his voice now flat, devoid of all emotion. 1 round. A triumphant, vicious smile spread across Derek's face. Excellent. Gentlemen, class is back in session. The gym buzzed with a sick, voyeuristic excitement. Phones came out discreetly at first, then more openly. This was going to be brutal. This was going to be content. James began to walk towards the ring. He untucked his gray-stained work shirt and pulled it over his head, and the gym fell silent again. The body underneath was not the soft, undefined physique of a middle-aged janitor. It was a roadmap of a different life. Dense, functional muscle, roped and coiled like a slumbering python. The skin of his torso and arms was a tapestry of faint, silvery scars, testimonials to forgotten wars. His back was a landscape of power, every muscle defined not by vanity, but by brutal, repetitive function. He moved to the corner and, taking a roll of tape from a medical kit, began to wrap his own hands. His movements were not the clumsy fumblings of a novice. They were swift, precise, a ritual performed with the muscle memory of 1,000 lifetimes. Marcus Williams' blood ran cold. He had seen that wrapping technique before. He had seen that quiet, deadly focus. He rushed over to Derek's corner. Derek, for the love of God, call this off, he pleaded in a harsh whisper. You have no idea who that is. Relax, Marcus, Derek scoffed, already putting on his 16-ounce gloves. I'm just going to teach the help a lesson in respect. It'll be over in 30 seconds. You fool, Marcus hissed. That's not the help. Look at him. That's the stance of a world-class fighter. I think that's James Washington. The name meant nothing to Derek, a man whose knowledge of boxing history was limited to his own regional trophies. He laughed and stepped into the ring. Whoever he is, he's about to learn why they call me the King. The bell rang. What followed was not a sparring session. It was an execution of an ego. Derek came out fast and aggressive, a storm of textbook combinations. He threw a jab, a cross, a hook, and James was simply not there. He hadn't bounced or weaved in the conventional sense. He had flowed, his body moving with a liquid grace, making a series of minute, almost imperceptible adjustments that left Derek's punches hitting nothing but empty, humiliating air. Stand still! Derek roared, his face already turning red with frustration. He lunged, throwing a wild haymaker. James pivoted on the ball of his foot, a movement of impossible smoothness, and Derek's own momentum sent him stumbling past, nearly tripping over his own feet. As he turned, James was there, standing perfectly balanced, his hands still held low in a deceptively casual stance. Your footwork is sloppy when you get angry, James said, his voice calm and clinical, an instructor correcting a novice. You're all arm punches. No power from the hips, you're fighting with your pride, not your body. For 2.5 minutes, the masterclass continued. Derek threw everything in his arsenal. James remained untouchable, a ghost in the machine. He didn't throw a single punch. He simply moved, a living demonstration of the highest level of defensive art. The crowd of students and onlookers was completely silent, their phones held aloft, recording the unbelievable spectacle. The initial bloodlust had turned into a kind of horrified awe. They weren't watching a fight. They were watching a master toying with a child. With 10 seconds left in the round, Derek, completely gassed, his lungs on fire, his face a mask of pure desperation, charged one last time, screaming with rage. This time, James didn't move away. He held his ground, and as Derek's final, telegraphed right cross came whistling towards his head, James acted. His left hand came up in a blur, not to block, but to gently redirect Derek's arm. Simultaneously, his right hand, open-palmed, shot forward with no wind-up, no visible effort. It connected with Derek's solar plexus. It wasn't a punch. It was a transfer of energy, a focused, invisible shockwave. The sound was a soft thump, but the effect was absolute. Every molecule of air in Derek's body was violently ejected. His eyes bulged in shock and agony. His body folded in half like a piece of paper, and he collapsed onto the canvas, convulsing, unable to draw a breath. The bell rang, its sharp chimes sounding like a funeral dirge in the tomb-like silence of the gym. The entire gym was shut down, frozen. No one moved. No one spoke. All that existed was the sight of the gym's king, the coach, the bully, writhing on the floor, and the quiet janitor standing over him, his expression not of triumph, but of deep, profound sorrow. As Derek's senior students finally rushed into the ring, it was Marcus Williams who walked to the center of the mat, his face pale, his voice shaking with the weight of the truth he was about to deliver. You moron, he said to the coaches, trying to help Derek. He then turned to the stunned onlookers. For 20 years, the fight world has whispered his name like a myth. A ghost. The greatest fighter who ever just vanished. He pointed a trembling finger at James, who was now calmly unwrapping his hands. That is not a janitor. That is James Silent Storm. Washington, the undefeated 5-time undisputed heavyweight champion of the world. A collective gasp, like the sound of 100 lungs deflating at once, swept through the gym. The name, the legend, detonated in their minds. The phones, which had been recording a novelty beatdown, now held evidence of the resurrection of a god. James, ignoring the pandemonium, walked over to the corner, picked up his discarded work shirt, and pulled it back on. The warrior vanished. The ghost returned. He picked up his mop and bucket, and without a single backward glance, headed towards the door to continue his shift. The consequences were swift and total. The footage, uploaded from a dozen different angles, broke the internet. Silent Storm and Janitor King trended for a week. Derek Mitchell became a global laughingstock. His gym, his reputation, his career, all were demolished by a single quiet act of forced justice. James tried to disappear again, but he couldn't. The world now knew who he was. He quit his job, but he found he couldn't escape his past. Leo, the young student he had defended, along with a handful of others, found him. They didn't ask him to teach them how to knock people out. They asked him to teach them how to have his stillness, his control, his quiet strength. Reluctantly, James agreed. In a small, rented room in a community center, far from the polished chrome of Olympus Gym, a new kind of dojo was born. There, James, the ghost Washington, the man who had sworn off violence, found a new purpose. He didn't teach fighting, he taught a philosophy. He taught the young men and women in front of him how to win the battle that truly mattered, the one against the rage, the fear, and the arrogance within themselves. He taught them that the greatest power a fighter can possess is the power to not have to fight at all. If this story of humility, respect, and the quiet power that lives within us all resonated with you, please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell for more incredible stories. And let us know in the comments below, do you believe a person can ever truly escape their past, or does it always find a way to shape their future?